if your policy has language that says you can't hire a public adjuster? Is that even legal? And while we're at it, let's talk about why public adjusters are suddenly getting fee caps from state to state. This is the anti-PA legislation episode. Let's get started. Let's talk about fee caps, but also anti-public adjuster language and policies. In fact, let's do it the other way around. Anti-public adjuster language and policies. Some policies now say you cannot hire a public insurance adjuster. Is that legal?
I want to say it's not legal. And I think the first time I saw an anti-PA endorsement was after Hurricane Ian, which was 2022. That's when the first time I saw it. And I saw it. I've been seeing them in surplus line type policies.
That's where I've seen them.
And the one that comes to mind that I saw was it's called velocity risk. But anyway, when I saw that, I was shocked. You as an insurance company are going to hire your own adjuster, your own engineer, but the policyholder can't have an advocate on their side as a public adjuster to help assist with their claim.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. It doesn't. I think it's completely wrong. And you know me, I don't like to draw hard lines in the sand, but this is absolutely ridiculous.
It feels like an obvious hard line.
It's ridiculous.
You know, people on the carrier side also look at this, and even if they don't like public adjusters, they recognize that the policyholder should always have a right to hire one. Absolutely. It doesn't make sense that you would write this out. What is the purpose of language like that?
You know what the purpose is that they're going to hire a professional, the insured, that's going to help with their claim, and the insurance company's going to have to pay out more. That's the whole purpose, right? Let's all be honest. So
they don't want to have to pay out as much by not hiring. I mean, to me, it feels like a total endorsement for hiring a public adjuster on every claim. If a policy is cheap, and one of the reasons that it's cheap is because you're not allowed to hire a public adjuster, that must mean that hiring a public adjuster is worthwhile.
It's I know right now there's actions going towards that to shut this down. And, departments, DOIs and states need to stop these policies from coming in. And I had a debate with an insurance carrier's attorney about this, and this is their argument.
Okay.
Their argument is the sell of this anti-PA policy or endorsement that's with the policy. It's a negotiation. They are paying, we say, we'll give you a reduced premium rate if you agree to these terms. And that's how they're trying to say that they're allowed to do that and negotiate the policy itself.
So is it then, in fact, a reduction of coverage?
I think that's a case-by-case situation. But I know this. They know in the long run, if they didn't have that, they're going to be paying out more. There's no doubt.
I mean, that's the obvious reasoning, right? They want to be able to save as much money as possible. Hiring a public adjuster is well known to increase the amount of settlement by many hundreds percentage.
Right.
On average, there are definitely research. There's research that's put into this by states. They know that it pays out a lot more. So if they can prevent you from hiring a public adjuster, then they will prevent themselves from having to pay out more money than they want to. And this is happening on surplus lines because the surplus lines, the language in the policies isn't directly approved by the states.
Correct.
They still have to meet the same guidelines that are there, but the language itself doesn't have to be approved by the states. And that's why it's showing up in the surplus lines and not anywhere else. I don't think any state has allowed that language to be approved. And in some states like Texas, there's been bills that have gone through that say you cannot have this language in the policies. But until that is there in every state, we're going to see this, at least in the surplus lines in different states, and it's popping up in different places.
Right.
Is it constitutional?
You would need to, I like to stay in my lane, and there's constitutional attorneys out there that would love to debate this. I don't think it is. I think you as an insured should have just the embodied right to be able to hire who you want to advocate for your claim. Period. Absolutely. Like, and so, you know, let's say you have you sign somebody up as a public adjuster, you get the policy, there's that endorsement in there. I mean, hey, do you get them to sign another contract just saying you're a consultant and roll from there? I know they're going to say, oh, no, it's still a public adjuster. Well, what about this? What if I had my PA license and I was the attorney? You know? So that
argument. Do you even need a PA license as an attorney?
No. Attorneys can
I see what you're saying.
Attorney, but if
I just change my role around and say that I'm just a consultant on this, and maybe the policy holder is sending everything in instead of me. Maybe I'm not acting as a public adjuster, even though I am licensed as one. Did they hire a public adjuster or did they hire a consultant? How would they ever know?
You know, there were situations where I've seen where the carrier, where a public adjuster signed up the claim, sent in an LOR. The carrier said that they would not adjust this claim until they have written authority from the PA that they have released the file.
That might have been my claim.
I don't know if it was or not. It might have been. But
I think that was my claim.
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Now we've had recordings where the carrier has said, if you hire a public adjuster, we're going to drop you.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I've seen that too. But this was with the anti-PA.
Oh, okay. That wasn't.
And they said we're not moving this forward until the PA is off the file.
So see, here's the pickle that the PA is in. If they get hired by a policyholder that has this endorsement, they have to look out for the best interests of the policyholder at all times.
Yeah.
If that policyholder breaches contract by hiring a public adjuster, the carrier doesn't necessarily have to pay the claim. So the public adjuster, in order to look out for the best interests of the policyholder, would have to remove themselves from the file. They wouldn't even be able to fight against this clause. So how would it ever be deemed to be inappropriate if it could never be challenged because a public adjuster can never be hired?
It's being challenged at this point.
It has to be challenged outside of a claim,
right? Legislation.
Through legislation,
right?
And that makes sense,
right?
But man, it is a pickle though. If it's there, public adjuster shouldn't take that claim on because you can't.
It's a tough situation.
It's a pickle.
It is. It is. Well, I hope a year from now we recircle on this conversation and all of those endorsements are eliminated. It needs to happen quick.
It's working slowly through the different states.
It is.
So hopefully we see it just become very blanket unconstitutional and we'll be set. And I think that's the key. If it's deemed unconstitutional by removing someone's rights to be able to hire a professional to represent them, which is what it's doing, then I don't think it should be legal. I really don't.
Right.
I don't care if you hate public adjusters or not, insurance companies. You're just removing someone's rights. That's messed up.
It is. It is. And we're talking to somebody that has a license.
Yeah.
We're talking a professional here.
Yeah, there's bad PAs, there's good PAs.
There's bad attorneys, there's good attorneys.
There's terrible insurance adjusters and great insurance adjusters. All right? But you can't remove someone's right to hire representation. It is legal representation for a claim. That's what they're licensed to do. Removing someone's right to that is crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. You might as well have something in the policy that says you can never sue us. You cannot hire an attorney. It's the same thing. Could you imagine a policy that said that? They might as well try that in a surplus lines. You might as well.
There'd be a lot of fighting over that.
The bar associations would love that one.
Hey, we're going to sell you a policy, and if we don't give you any coverage, you still can't sue us.
Yeah.
like
sounds about right, though, right? That
sounds good.
You might as well be saying that. No, it's a crazy thing. So
I mean, for them to come up with this, it's my opinion that they had people just crunching numbers, and they said, all right, let's look at 5,000 claims where there was a PA on the file. Mm-hmm. Let's look at 5,000 claims where there wasn't a PA on the file. What is the what was the payout on these different ones? Oh, wow.
Well, according to the Citizens study, it's over 700% more with the public adjuster involved.
like the carrier citizens in Florida, 700%.
750 something. I don't remember the exact number, but it was over 700% more was the average.
That's pretty impressive.
That's crazy.
That's pretty impressive.
You know that they wanted to show, when they did this, you know that they wanted to show that they didn't increase it at all, and there was no point to having public adjusters. And they ate crow. You know, I think it's a beautiful result, obviously. Being a former public adjuster, or I currently have my license, I just don't act as one, but being a public adjuster myself, I think it's a beautiful result for someone to acknowledge it. There is some value there, but that's a big difference. If I'm an insurance company, I don't want a public adjuster on my files either.
It's a massive difference.
Huge.
Well, speaking of, limitations, if you will, on public adjusters, what do you think about fee caps?
I think it's an attempt to get rid of the PA profession. Because it's the carriers that are pushing this narrative with the state legislators that there should be a fee cap. And the idea is that, public adjusters are taking advantage of policyholders. They're charging a ridiculous amount of the claim settlement amount just to help them handle the claim. And we're taking care of the customers. Why would they ever need a public adjuster? But the reality is, as the Citizens paper shows, a public adjuster is needed. You might have a 700% increase in your settlement amount just because a public adjuster involved, because they're talking about things and the ways that the policies are being interpreted wrong. There's so many ways that the carriers can screw up a file, and if someone doesn't know any better on the policyholder side to point it out, then it's never going to get resolved fairly. And just to get to a fair resolution, you need to be able to hire representation. This is a complex system. It's hard to deal with a claim. Policyholders have never done this before. This is our first time ever filing a claim. What do? They don't know what to do. There's no written instruction from the carrier. Do this, 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 and this. Is just file the claim and trust us. That's the thing that they're told to do. They don't even get like a form that says an appeal process like they do for health insurance. If they get denied some kind of medication, here's the appeal process. They don't even get that for most insurance, for property insurance. So what do they do other than hire a public adjuster? But the public adjusters need to have enough money to be able to support their business. And in many states, there's a lot of man-hours involved because the case law and the laws are not in the policyholder's favor, so the public adjuster has to work harder. So they might have to have a more than 10% amount of the claim in order to justify working, especially for smaller claims.
Yeah.
So how do you get representation if you're a small claim, if you're like a residence that has a $20,000 claim? How do you get representation if you have a fee cap of 10% and the public adjuster just cannot afford to handle that claim for you? It's the same issue that attorneys have. How do you take on a $20,000 case as an attorney? You really can't you?
It matters what state it's in, but typically, a $20,000 case, you're wasting a lot of people's time.
You can't.
Especially in Georgia. You just are.
If you're not going to get attorney's fees paid and your costs paid
that's what I meant by different states.
If there's no fee shift in that state where the losing party pays the fees, then it's just not feasible for an attorney to take those on. Maybe they cut their teeth on a few of them, but they're not really making any money. Right? Public adjusters have the same issue. We can't make any money on that. On top of that, we can't hire experts. And in some states, you're not allowed to hire experts on behalf of the policyholder anyway, so keep in mind. But it was brought up to me today by Chad Williams, a friend of mine, that if the policyholder can't hire him as an expert and pay him directly, then he has to go to the policyholder to get paid. So we've just saved the policyholder from the plight of public adjusters, so the scourge of the public adjuster who's overcharging us. Now they're only charging 10%, 8%, sometimes 2.5%, Delaware. But now you can only pay the public adjusters that amount, but we also have to pay for all of the experts on top of that. And it's outside of the fees of the public adjuster because the public adjuster's limit might include any expert fees, and they can't do it anymore.
Would you say Kentucky?
So now the policyholder's coming out of pocket even more than they would have without the fee cap being there.
Yeah, that's to have a fee cap at, let's just call it 10%, plus any expenses has to come out of that 10%. I don't like that.
It's not feasible at all.
I don't like that at all.
It's not a business model that works.
No, I don't like that.
Public adjuster can't handle it unless it's a very large claim.
You're forcing the policyholder to come out of pocket thousands and thousands of dollars to defend their claim.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what you're doing at that
Deductibles have gone up already. If they're really that worried about how much money the policyholders are paying out of pocket, they should reduce their deductibles. Stop trying to get legislatures to pass some kind of fee cap rule. Cut it out. If you really care about the policyholder, reduce your deductibles. Or you can't. Oh, because it doesn't work with you in your business model. You won't make enough profit. Oh, it matters if you make profit, but not the public adjusters. This is legitimate business. I don't understand how this could ever be something that is set by legislation. It's just crazy.
And I get it if there's, PAs, even attorneys that are charging, 50%.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay.
The highest PA fee I've ever heard was 33%. And I thought that was high personally. But if I had to pay 33% to gain any of the benefits of my policy where I was getting $0, I'd still pay it.
Well, see, that's a business decision. And
yeah.
In Georgia, it's 33%. That's actually the fee cap.
That is the fee cap.
In Georgia, it's 33%.
Yeah.
Sounds like an attorney wrote that, huh? They're usually at 33%. But I'm with you. I mean, think about it. If you have a claim as a homeowner or a commercial building owner, whatever, and let's just say it's below the deductible, right? Is it worth giving a public adjuster, 20% of the pie of getting the claim actually paid? To me, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. Think about it this way. If you're a homeowner that's never dabbled in insurance, never had an insurance claim, you have a fire at your house. You're talking ALE. You're talking structure. You're talking contents. You're talking mitigation. All of this that comes into play. Like the PA should not be restricted, in my opinion, in a situation like that to 10%. Think about it. Like their value that they're bringing to the table to handle all of these different coverages and all of these moving parts, way more valuable than 10%.
My expertise is worth something, right? I've put a lot of effort into making sure that I know how to do something, how to handle something, how a claim should work, how to negotiate. There are so many things a public adjuster, especially a public adjuster, needs to know. We have to be a jack of all trades, and we have to be better than everybody involved in order to understand when bullshit is being fed to us, because it's constantly being fed to us from all sides, including sometimes from the policyholder. We have to know. So there is a value to that profession, and you're just undervaluing the crap out of it, and you're just making it harder for policyholders to be able to become made whole by reducing their ability to hire someone, because there's going to be less people there to hire, and the people that are there to hire at that price range probably getting what you pay for.
So I mean, I think you kind of touched base on this, but it's a slippery slope coming with the, hey, let's go from 33%, let's make it 20%. 5 years later, let's make it 15. Now let's make it 10. Like you're seeing this coming, but the thing is what I'm also seeing is that advocates on the insured side are fighting back on this, and they need to keep fighting back on this.
And even though we're fighting back, in Georgia, when I was the president of GAPIA, you were there. We were negotiating directly with House Bill 254?
256?
256?
One of those.
Doesn't even matter. It was a bill that was very anti-public adjuster, and in that was a fee cap, and they wanted to make it 10% for residential claims and 33% for commercial claims. It's kind of a backwards thing.
Explain why it's backwards.
It's backwards because commercial claims are usually large. 10% of $10% of $1 million, I can do some work on that. 10% of $20,000, it's very hard for me to work. For me to make $2,000 for an entire claim, and it's a lot of the same workload. There's going to be a lot more in the investigation and estimating on the larger claim, but the negotiation portion of that really isn't that much bigger. But $2,000 is not enough for me to handle a $20,000 claim when it's a giant work. There's a lot of man hours involved. It's what it comes down to. So it makes more sense to do 33% on residential and 10% on commercial, because commercial are usually bigger. So it was backwards. Now, we sat across from them, from the attorney for the Department of Insurance, the DOI, the commissioner, and we negotiated line by line in that bill, and we were able to get things changed. We got it to 33% across the board, and a lot of other things that we were able to accomplish. Right. It's actually kind of cool going through that whole process, to be frank with you. I mean, you were there.
Yep.
So it's But
I mean, seriously, think if we didn't fight against that, if we didn't have the knowledge to go in front of the DOI and have these conversations, and PAs were capped at 10% for residential claims. Who is this hurting? It is hurting the small homeowner. No one's going to want to help them with their claim.
And obviously, it's hurting the public adjusters too.
Yeah.
Which I think was the goal.
Well,
hurt the public adjusters, prevent policyholders from being able to hire one.
Right.
Which is what the surplus lines deal with the anti-PA language is doing, is preventing someone from being able to hire a public adjuster. How do we prevent a policyholder from being able to hire a public adjuster? Reduce their fees, so there's less of them.
They say that the fee cap is to protect the insured.
It's clearly not. It's just like the fee shift. Well, we want less litigation. In Florida, they just changed the laws where the attorney's fees aren't getting paid.
Right.
Right. And the argument was there was too much litigation, that it was costing policyholders too much. Our rates are skyrocketing as a result of this. If we pass this law, the rates will go down. Mark my words. They fucking went up. They didn't go down.
And all the policies are ACV now, and they have 5% deductibles.
Yeah, congratulations, insurance companies. You're really good at lying. That was some bullshit. But here we are. But it's the same issue, you know. We'll talk about how this is hurting policyholders, and we'll get this thing passed. Turns out there's only one party that benefits from it. It's always the same party.
And when I say that, I mean, let's say it's a 1,500 square foot ranch house, 3-tab. I'm just ballparking this. You could probably replace that roof for $8,000.
Maybe,
right? Let's say 9. What PA is going to work a file for $800?
Dude, unless it's a friend or family, it's not a viable business model. They have a lot of expenses.
And it's not a greedy thing either.
No.
It just doesn't make sense.
It's a profession. No, I mean, honestly, the state requires us to have a certain amount of bonds to keep our licensure up, CE credits, all these things are additional expenses. We have a very large E&O insurance cost associated with a lot of this. The cost of being a public adjuster is high. And you have to know your shit to be effective, which means there is a lot of cost in education that you have to get. It's not just getting the licensure. You are taking classes constantly all over the place, trying to learn as much as you possibly can. It is a heavy lift to be a public adjuster. It takes good, intelligent, persistent people to do it. And there is a lot of travel involved back and forth to these locations. Software.
It's just, I mean.
It never ends. There's too much. The overhead is high. You can't do this at a low budget and do it effectively. Not these days. You could 20 years ago. Not now. Not when they deny everything. Not when the McKinsey model is in full effect.
I want to see, I wish we could push fast forward just for 5 minutes and see what this looks like 5 years from now.
It would be interesting.
I would like to see that.
This is one of those time capsule moments.
I feel like we're on the fence, and it's going to go one way or another.
I think AI pushes it to the policyholder side personally. I'm optimistic.
I hope so.
I think that AI is going to expose the practices by having enough data and be able to sparsing through that to make that happen. I think AI solves a lot of this issue, but it's going to be time involved to get there.
Right.
All right. I'm involved in a company called Borelli, and that is one of the main things that we want to do is to be able to take the data and allow it to unlock what's really going on to be able to show it to the states.
Yeah.
Here's reality.
Here it is.
Snapshot. We didn't make this up. Here it is. I think that could make a big difference.
When I've met with the Department of Insurance, and Matt, you're at the table. We've met with them multiple times. One of the biggest sticking points for the DOI was we don't have enough data. We don't have enough complaints.
Yeah.
You should see how many complaints we have for medical insurance versus homeowners insurance. Well, no, like, come on, man. Like, that's really not a good argument. Like,
isn't.
Everybody goes to the doctor multiple times probably a year.
Yeah.
And guess what? Who's making the complaints? You know, it's the doctor that's not getting paid after doing the work. Like these, you know, they got the AOBs and
they have medical billing departments that are probably filing these complaints too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have. So this is apples and oranges.
It is.
So
it is, but they're going to focus on the squeaky wheel, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
Every department's going to focus on the squeaky wheel. So how do you become the squeaky wheel? You have to have the data.
Yep.
And that's the hard thing. And I think AI provides the opportunity, if done right. I think we're doing it right at Brelly. I think AI provides the opportunity for us to be able to provide the data that the states need to make a good, valuable decision, a logical decision that isn't based on how much money is in that person's pocket and what they're offering. Because I think most politicians that get into the political business are not crooked. They might become that, but they aren't to begin with. I think we can actually do some good if we have good, solid data. And we can show the world that good, solid data so that there is a lot of media attention on it too.
Yeah. So, again, I want to look back on this date. I'm going to put it on my calendar.
Yeah.
12 months from now. And I'm hoping that these anti-public adjusting endorsements are gone. And
Wiped out.
And number two, I hope there's a less push on public adjusters being capped. Hey, look, you can do a reasonable cap, right? Like, in a sense.
What's reasonable?
Hey, if you want to make it 30%, whatever.
I think that's more than reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's more than reasonable.
Honestly, it's a high number that most people don't even charge.
Right.
So some do, and I'm not saying that it's bad, but it's what most people don't charge. So if you made it if that was really you were just trying to keep them from charging 50%, put a 33% on there. I think everybody's going to be like, okay.
But I've only seen like one public adjuster actually charge 30%, and I don't work with them really that much. So it makes it tough, right?
It does.
So they're at 30. Law firm comes in, they're at 30.
Yeah.
Come on. It doesn't make sense. So maybe there's a situation, if it goes legal, you reduce your fee. Look, I'm not telling you how to run your business as a public adjuster.
I think the reality is, get out of our business. We'll figure out what the market will pay, and the market will adjust and everything, and we can adjust to meet the market conditions. If a person is willing to pay a certain amount, that's what they're willing to pay.
Yep.
That's reality. That's how business is supposed to work. As long as you're not gouging and meet the definition of that kind of a situation, then you're fine. Or are we gouging? I don't know.
As long as
Stop trying to put caps. I think just eliminate that from the narrative. All right. If you want to reduce how much outgo the policyholders are paying, reduce your deductibles. How about that? I think that's the final port there. If you actually care about how much the policyholders are paying, reduce your deductibles. Done. You don't actually care though, do you? Do you? I didn't think so.